Welcome back to Millionaire Mind Audio, where the true drama is always hidden beneath the flashy headlines. Make sure to subscribe today if you want to see the unvarnished truth behind celebrity chaos. This is going to be insane. The Beckham family promoted an impeccable image for many years. Strong, formidable, unbeatable, and flawless. However, that image has officially collapsed, and everyone is witnessing the aftermath. Brooklyn Beckham, his wife Nicola Peltz, and her millionaire father Nelson Peltz are at the heart of this problem. According to experts, a man never thought Brooklyn belonged close to his daughter. What began as stress and quiet side-eye behind closed doors has now escalated into a full-fledged family conflict. We are discussing court documents, declarations made in public, silence where love once existed, and harm that may never be repaired. Bridges have burned, lines have been broken, and no one is pretending anymore. And this is the query that has people stumped. Is Brooklyn truly relocating by himself, or has he been drawn entirely into the orbit of the Peltz? Because there is a significant power struggle taking place behind the beautiful Instagram photos and heartfelt words. When Brooklyn publicly betrayed his parents in a lengthy, emotional social media post, it was the true breaking point. He charged that David and Victoria Beckham were manipulating the story, prioritizing the business before the family, and consistently treating his wife disrespectfully. He didn't hesitate. He left no space for it to be spun afterward. Reconciliation was not an option, and Brooklyn made it obvious that he was Choose Nicola. People were astounded not only by what he stated, but also by how definitive it sounded. We're working on it, but there's no room for compromise, just a clean break. Furthermore, some close to the Beckhams claim that the message didn't appear out of nowhere. Something significant happened behind closed doors a few days prior to Brooklyn's official debut. According to reports, David and Victoria Beckham wrote a private letter to their son directly, not via the internet, friends, or the media. What made them act in this way? Because communication had completely broken off by then. According to reports, Brooklyn sent a cease and desist letter telling his parents to only communicate through attorneys and to stop bringing him up in public. The entire Beckham family was taken aback by that one action. However, they were much more unsettled by the person they thought was actually responsible. According to sources, the Beckhams believed Brooklyn wasn't the only source of the legal action. They believed that Nicola and her family, particularly her millionaire father, had significant influence. David and Victoria did not send a defensive or furious letter. Insiders characterize it as intensely personal, anxious, and emotional. There were no demands or threats, just parents requesting one small thing from their son as evidence that he was all right. It seemed to drive Brooklyn even more away rather than defuse the situation. The public takedown decreased in a matter of days. Brooklyn asserted that he was at last defending himself and vigorously resisted the notion that Nicola was in charge of him. That story, he claimed, was entirely in reverse. Brooklyn claimed that his parents had dominated his life for many years and that he was not going back. However, this is the point at which public opinion truly diverges, because every action he's taken since severing links contradicts Brooklyn's insistence that he's at last free. His whole world has moved toward the Peltz family after the fallout. He runs in their social circle, lives in their orbit, and reportedly only uses middlemen to connect with his parents. Because of this, more people are beginning to think that this is a direct power battle rather than merely emotional family conflict. And the wedding is the one occasion that people can't stop thinking about. More precisely, the now famous first dance. According to Brooklyn, his mother interrupted his first dance with Nicola. He claims that a moment left him vulnerable and ashamed. He claimed that Nicola fled the room sobbing. One detail never changes, even though various individuals recall it in different ways. Everything changed at that very instant. According to those present, the atmosphere in the room abruptly changed. On the spot, what was meant to be a happy celebration broke down. Instead, a moment that was supposed to bring the two families together became a profound emotional wound that would never go away. Even those attempting to remain impartial acknowledged that timing and music had nothing to do with the dance. It has to do with perception, emotions, and boundaries. And that night seems to have been the tipping moment for Nicola. After the wedding, she reportedly made her stance quite evident. People with direct knowledge of the matter claim that Brooklyn was informed he could not continue to live with both his mother and his wife. Simply put, it was a decision, and Brooklyn went with Nicola. Things have only gotten colder since that choice. Allegedly, family gatherings have been skipped, invitations have been turned down, and communication has stopped entirely. According to insiders, Nicola has not wavered in her refusal to go to any event where David and Victoria Beckham are present. Depending on your stance, you may view that as self-defense or something more deliberate, but the result is indisputable. Now, Brooklyn Beckham is almost cut off from the household he was raised in. The most influential person in this whole affair hardly ever speaks, despite Nicola taking center stage in public. Nicola Peltz, her father, is a corporate titan and wealthy investor. He is a man accustomed to manipulation, organization, and control. Numerous reports state that Brooklyn has never really impressed Nicola Peltz. According to sources, he subtly disregarded Brooklyn's professional endeavors in everything from photography to cooking to lifestyle branding, viewing them as disorganized and aimless. There were no outward insults or loud altercations, only icy cynicism. And it matters when someone with that much money and power isn't persuaded by you, particularly when that person is in charge of the familial environment you currently inhabit. One further fact raises grave concerns regarding Brooklyn's future. A rigorous prenuptial agreement was signed before to the wedding. Brooklyn would not be able to access the Peltz family fortune in the event that the marriage ended. In accordance with the arrangement, Brooklyn would only receive what the couple created jointly. And because of dependency rather than money, that clause caused grave concerns. After severing ties with his parents, Brooklyn would lose his entire support network in addition to his wife if his marriage ever failed. David and Victoria Beckham are said to have been plagued ever since by the worry that their son has entrusted his destiny entirely to another else. People close to the Beckhams maintain that the door is still open in spite of everything that has transpired. They claim that Brooklyn Beckham would be welcomed back right away by David and Victoria. No demands, no conditions, and no public apologies. However, Brooklyn has stated his stance rather clearly. He claims to have no regrets. He feels justified in leaving since he thinks he expressed his truth. With the exception of Brooklyn, who is absent, his siblings' lives are going on, their careers are progressing, their parents are openly encouraging, and the family machine is still operating. People who knew him long before Nicola and long before fame morphed into family politics are beginning to speak up, despite Brooklyn's insistence that he is finally free. Nobody engaged is flattered by what they are saying. Hollywood wasn't the source of one of the most surprising voices. It originated in football. In a surprising fashion, Brooklyn's former Queen's Park Rangers young coach publicly expressed sympathy. For him, he was impartial. He took his time standing up for David and Victoria. Additionally, he did not commend Brooklyn's choices. Rather, he created an image that unnerved many. He talked about a childhood that was characterized by anxiety, ongoing stress, and an emotional remoteness that most people could never comprehend. At the age of 14, he talked about Brooklyn being under constant surveillance, on how wealth and celebrity did not equate to security, harmony, or contentment. Even for someone accustomed to working with the kids of well-known families, there were some really uncomfortable times. The message was apparent, even though he refrained from placing direct blame. Because of his abnormal upbringing, Brooklyn was susceptible. Weak to pressure, susceptible to influence, and susceptible to thinking that the only way to defend himself was to cut everyone off. This is the point at which the story becomes awkward. One reality emerges when emotion is removed. Nicola didn't abandon her world to become a part of Brooklyn's. Brooklyn moved from his world into hers. She remained near her family. She maintained her network of support. She continued to be self-sufficient. Brooklyn, on the other hand, cut ties with his parents, lost access to the structure of his upbringing, and linked his emotional destiny to the Peltz household. What observers are most concerned about is that imbalance. It's not because Brooklyn is weak or Nicola is bad, but rather because loneliness has great power. Even in the absence of direct control, the effect of one individual or family increases when they become your exclusive emotional support system. Additionally, Nicola Peltz has said nothing at all despite being repeatedly featured in the media. No explanations, no denials, and no public defense of his son-in-law. Furthermore, Nicola Peltz's quiet seems deliberate rather than accidental. He is forthright, decisive, and unimpressed by appearance alone, according to many who know his world. According to reports, he sees Brooklyn as a young guy who lacks focus and is still looking for his purpose despite having a well-known last name. Even though that perception might not be accurate, perception matters when power is at stake. Additionally, insiders claim that as Brooklyn's dispute with his parents has intensified, Nelson's distrust has only increased. Because severing ties with your family is not a sign of strength in elite circles. It is an indication of instability. It makes people wonder. It raises questions. Brooklyn's professional identity, photography, food, lifestyle, and branding are all subtly influencing this conflict. Every new turn has sparked criticism from the general public, as well as purportedly private worries within the Peltz circle. While Brooklyn's journey has been adventurous, uneven, and unresolved, David Beckham's empire was formed by discipline, consistency, and long-term focus. That difference is important. Friction is inevitable when one family prioritizes results, leverage, and power, while the other values legacy and endurance. It is unavoidable. According to insiders, Nelson Peltz has never been persuaded that Brooklyn offers enough strategic, financial, or symbolic value. According to those close to David and Victoria Beckham, their son's transformation took time. They say it began quietly. Brooklyn's own decisions were abruptly postponed. Discussions were filtered. Lawyers started having private family discussions. They maintained that their son's speech wasn't always like this, didn't always perceive himself as in charge, and didn't always portray them as villains. Brooklyn vehemently disputes the account of what happened. However, it is difficult to overlook the timing. His distance from his parents increased with the depth of his marriage. Who isn't involved in this rivalry is one of its most illuminating aspects, not who is. Without severing ties, Brooklyn's siblings have maintained their relationship with their parents, continued to post together on social media, helped one another, and developed independent lives. Serious conjecture has been sparked by this disparity. It implies that Brooklyn's circumstances might be singular rather than systemic, and that poses an awkward query. Why did only one child leave the Beckham household so totally and in such a public fashion if the Beckham household was really as controlled as Brooklyn says? Publicly, Brooklyn has received recognition for advocating for himself. However, insiders claim that the personal cost has been terrible behind closed doors. There would be no spontaneous family dinners, no informal check-ins, and no backup plan. These days, every interaction is meticulously controlled, filtered, and formal. Relationships become far more difficult to restore once they get to that point. The majority of celebrity family dramas have a recurring theme. Reconciliation follows. Shock and quiet. This one doesn't. Because this is a structural issue rather than merely an emotional one. One son torn between two strong families with diametrically opposed ideologies. And it begins to feel more permanent the longer this goes on. This is why it's so heavy. Because this isn't about a single disagreement or unpleasant experience. Systems, influence, leverage, and long-term effects are all important. That raises the question that looms over everything. What would happen if Brooklyn decided to change his mind? Feeling justified makes it easy to walk away. The difficult part is returning. Both parties must be humble, accountable, and forgiving. Insiders claim that although David and Victoria Beckham are allegedly still amenable to reunion, not everyone is. The road back would be difficult and uncertain if Brooklyn wanted to get back in touch tomorrow. This is the current state of affairs. If Brooklyn ever had second thoughts, would Nicholas be in favor of a reunion? Would Nelson Peltz let that door open again? Or has the boundary already been permanently crossed? The Beckham family currently exists in two distinct realities, one of which is steadfastly separated and the other of which is progressing together. Brooklyn Beckham is adamant that he has no regrets. Victoria and David Beckham are adamant that they will wait indefinitely. Additionally, Nicola Peltz continues to be unshakable, central, present, and steady. It all depends on your point of view, whether she is subtly influencing the story or defending her marriage. However, one thing cannot be disputed. Brooklyn Beckham's life has drastically changed, and it might not be possible to go back. Make sure to subscribe to Celeb Rush immediately if you want more in-depth analyses like these. You won't want to miss what happens next because new articles appear quickly.